Welcome back, everyone. We are talking today about military support entities. So we talk oftentimes about our active duty and our reservist personnel. We also talk about the vets, and sometimes we talk about Department of Defense. A lot of people are aware, though, that we use contractors. And why do we use them? How do we use them? How does the money flow? What are the different ways that people get involved? So there's a lot to this. It's actually an enormous part of defense. And so I've often said that I didn't serve in the military, but that I've been professionally raised by them. And what I mean is that I've been part of the military work culture for quite some time. And, you know, there's information you need to know when you work defense. It isn't enough to just come in and say, well, you agree or disagree with a general position on military action. You have to think about all the intricacies, talent management, feeding our people, organizing, structuring, planning ahead. Strategy for military is much more complicated than people oftentimes give it credit for. And so we want to make sure that we are honoring and discussing those things today. So we have Karen on, who I am just about to ask. Fray is a woman who has, similar to me, worked in this industry for quite some time, and is going to bring a bit of a different voice than what we typically hear. Hello. Can you hear me okay? Not sure if we're getting through. Can you hear me? Let's see.
There you are.
I am here. Did I
Ah,
pause?
yes.
Okay. Well, welcome to live in rural Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. That might explain it.
Yes. So we are between Milwaukee and Madison, and I had to drive about 40 minutes into town to get access to connectivity.
Okay. Gotcha.
And remember, I'm the hour behind you.
Yes, yes.
So that means, you know, somewhere in the 5 a.m. range, we were searching for access.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So that's every day for those people who live out there.
Yeah, and actually, I don't want to derail our discussion, but I
Right.
think it's a really important point to emphasize. When you don't have access to constant connectivity,
Yeah.
your ability to work and interact, to be aware of what's happening outside of your space, um, everything from medical to food to military, even, right? Knowing what's happening and wanting to participate. I mean, it is incredibly challenging, and I
Yeah.
haven't even gotten to the West yet. So I know as I get further west in some of the very rural areas, I'm going to run into some of that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so to bring you up to speed, I've given a little bit of intro, but our focus today really is going to be on these supporting units for military.
Right.
What I introed with was really that we talk so much about active duty and our reservist personnel. Sometimes we talk about DoD and certainly our vets. But we don't think about the entire structure of DoD, and it's massive.
It is very massive. There's a whole group of
Yeah.
people who are contractors, and sometimes you hear about them in a negative light. They're considered those who are leeching off the government and taking away, but they're actually those who are serving those who serve. And they're a
Oh,
really
that's perfect.
they are considered the backbone, and they actually help to fast track a lot of what goes on in government because there's a lot of bureaucracy, and that's not a secret. It's just that there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape in government, and when you go outside of that and you step outside the lines of government a little bit, and you're working on not really on a commercial side, but within the confines of a government structure, but still in a government contracted company. You still have rules and regulations. You have the FAR. You have so many regulations to follow. They keep you in check, but at the same time, there is not a lot of layers of structure that that you have to follow. You know, you can stay after hours and work on a project, knowing that you are probably going to get compensated in some sort of way that's not going to be frowned on the government and saying, oh, that's over $25. I'm going to have to penalize you. Not saying that they're going, you know, and not saying that these companies are taking that from the government, but, you know, a lot of these companies, they do have a commercial side where they are selling to outside government companies. So they do have a better free flow of funding sometimes so that they can look out for their employees. It almost seems as if not that government doesn't look out for their people, but some of these commercial companies, they do have that, they're the ones that are really driving that balance of, you know, life balance, a work balance, trying to see how can we best accommodate our human capital, our people. How can we make work better for them? Because the people are driving that. Like, you know, hey, they'll be the first ones to say, I don't work for the government. I work, you know, I work for this, I work for a real company. So, you know, how can we make it better? But at the same time, if they are supporting governments, they still want to do the best to support government, knowing that they are doing work to make the government better for national security. It means everything to them. It means everything to me, which is why I do what I do. But at the same
So
time,
give
it's
us a
like,
little background on you specifically, how you got to know all of this, right? For someone who has never worked in this space, for example,
right,
they don't know what a FAR is, right? The Federal Acquisitions Regulations, which I joke.
correct.
I always say it's a book this thick with Bible thin paper whose goal is to regulate fairness, yet with so many rules absolutely guarantees fairness will never be achieved.
That's pretty
It
good.
achieves the complete opposite of its actual goal. Yeah, it's actually one of my two primary examples of problems of how we approach government,
Yeah.
because we want to have rules because it's easy to follow that we've added rules, but in many cases we actually create more problems than we solve. But let's start with you. Let's hear your background, how you got here, because your passion and knowledge are exemplary and necessary. But we got to get the backup first.
I don't even remember how I got here. That's probably one of those stories that I'm like, if I really thought back to how I got here, I might say, oh man, that's where I took the wrong turn. So it might,
May we all say that in life.
right, right. So it might be one of those things where you're like, maybe I really should think about how I got here as opposed to maybe I should more probably should focus on how I got into this space when I realized, oh, this is what it's really about. So I do work for a small government contracting company, and they've been around for over 20 years and going like, actually over 25 years. They used to have a commercial side. They used to sell to Sun Microsystems. They were a reseller, we're a reseller for them. And then they branched over into the government side. I started working for them on the commercial side, and when they branched into over on the government side, it was when I had decided to go back to school, and you know, I did that, and then when the company transitioned over, there was an opportunity for me on the government side. When I got into the government side, I learned about all these rules and regulations because when you're in the government space and you're a government contractor, it's really beneficial to have people working in that space who have either served in the military or have been working on government contracts for a very long time. They have that knowledge capital that you really want to dig into. It's a blessing and a curse. It's one of those things where they're like, oh, I know the rules. This is how we do things. This is how we get around things. And then at the same time, it's
No,
you bring
nope, that you
something new
should
to
get
the
around
table.
things.
Yes, they
You
do.
said
They do. Like when you're writing certain contracts, you're like, word it this way. And you're like, but you, no, 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 word it this way. And you're like, okay, let's do that. You know, that kind of goes with everything. They have that knowledge. They know how to tell you how to do things. But at the same token, when you are wanting to do something new, they know how to do things. And because of that, there's a lot of pushback when it comes to trying to do something new in government. which is why with government contractors, they kind of allow you to push the envelope a little bit, which is what I love doing. Um, which is also a blessing and a curse. But it's one of those things where, you push the envelope just a little bit on the government contracting side, which is why government really likes working with contractors because they do get that outside of the box thinking, which is what they really, really do want, which is how we've been able to advance so much because of you can get that commercial thought. You can get, what is trending now, and you can find out, hey, this is what they're doing out there. Will it work on the government space? It's kind of like with medicine. You realize that you've created it for one thing, and then all of a sudden it starts working for another. So you have these transferable technologies that really work in one space. They work on the government side. And if it goes to benefit national security and strengthen what we're doing for us on our side, this is where government and commercial companies and defense contractors really work hand in hand. And that's what it's really supposed to do. So I've stayed in this space and with a small company because I really like working with small companies. I like the smallness of it. You have a say. You don't get lost in the
Yeah.
shuffle. You don't get lost in the crowd. I think big companies are great as well. They have that backing. They have that sustainability sometimes. But I've been here for a while. I really love what I do. But that's how I got here. That's how I stay here.
Yeah. So you mentioned one thing that sticks out is the
Yeah.
small versus large company,
Yeah.
and I would argue there's actually a purpose in both, right? That the
Yes.
capabilities of each are different. And I hate to make metaphors, but in this case, I think it really works. Is one of the things we also saw at NATO with different country sizes. What we
Mm.
can do with the resources we have as the United States, on paper, transcends what a smaller nation can do, but their agility,
Hmm.
their ability to try things exceeds ours. And it's similar in a large, small company space as well for the government and for defense. What you can do as a small company allows you to be agile, to ask questions, to try things at a lower cost, lower risk. But a larger company can
Yes.
make a seemingly larger impact in scale, but is hindered then by so much of the maybe red tape within the group. So could you talk a little bit about because of those differences, what you as a small company can do for defense that we may not necessarily want to contract to a larger company?
Well, I know, here at AISG, the thing our thing that we do well is training. Um,
Right.
and there are a lot of companies that do training. They do training well. It's just that with our size, we get to bring people in who they get to have their voice, and they get to lend their expertise to certain areas of training programs. So, and with, like you said, um, they have more of an impact because their voices can be a little bit louder, whereas and heard. Whereas in a large, they don't really get to do that. So when you have that balance between a big and a small, a lot of large companies will actually subcontract to a smaller company, um, just because well, first of all, it's good business. You're giving more business to the small companies. A lot of small companies they're in a disadvantaged category. They're minority owned, they are veteran owned, women owned. They do have that disadvantaged opportunity to be able to grow. So a lot of large companies will take advantage of that opportunity to get more business, to reach out to build that. But they do know that with that they're strengthening the economy. They're bringing in additional knowledge. They can reach out to those small companies that actually have the ability to source better, to reach out to a better mindset. Um, Sometimes there are certain contracts that do go to smaller companies, and that is their niche. They do something and they do something well. Whereas the larger companies, they may not be able to get that resource. They're just too big. They're too broad. Um, that's a really big advantage to having that large and small relationship between two companies, between two contracts.
Yeah, I often see, especially when, you mentioned training, and I'll broaden that to education and training, and something we see in the military that is different than what we might see in higher ed or in K-12 is that
Yeah,
what our military personnel need to know is constantly changing. What was rule
yeah,
3 months ago may not be today. And so for a big company to
correct.
create those systems, they would have to be constantly changing focus, which can be not only laborious, but it can actually become problematic with so many layers in a large company. But a small company like yours, specifically for something like this, it allows them to
Yeah,
constantly, like you said, have somebody who's able to monitor change and be agile in what's being produced, because they don't have to go through so many layers to make those changes. So sometimes it's like you said, it's good for the workforce, it's good for specific skill sets, but sometimes it's also because it matches what we need in DoD to be successful
correct. And
and
smaller companies have that
gratifying.
agility. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's important. Now, you made another comment about the FAR, which I followed up with, but I want to go back to that
yeah,
because I think
that.
it's something that it is so important not only for DoD, but it's so important for the American public to understand. As lawmakers, the
Hmm.
way that lawmakers prove their worth is to make a law, to make a rule. But when we do that, we end up creating so many rules that the only people that can participate in the system are those who either
Yeah,
know all the rules already, which is going to be people who already have money or in, as you mentioned, the people who've been there a long time, or the people
right,
who enjoy gaming a system enough to figure out their way around the rules. And in
right.
other
Which kind of
cases,
defeats
we
the
actually,
purpose.
it completely does.
Yes.
And I think there's a fear. There's an absolute fear of what we don't know. And so I think for Americans, we fear that there's so much money going into defense. Surely, surely it could be spent more wisely. And if we make more rules, we will force people to spend it more wisely.
Yes.
I challenge that position from my perspective, that it actually creates more challenges versus necessarily encourages wiser spending. I'd be curious as to your position from a more real world experience. What have you seen?
The more rules you have, it just kind of makes it possible for people to say, how can I get around this rule? I don't know if it's going to make a difference. I think you could cut the FAR in half and people
Yes.
would not even recognize it, and they would either still follow all the rules or they're going to find a way to break them. For those who watch Harry Potter, and I'm a fan, there is one of the scenes in one of the early Harry Potter movies where there's a every time something happens, the headmistress or master, whatever, she goes and she puts a rule on the wall. Like anything that they do that she does not like, she goes and she makes an educational decree and she puts a new rule on the wall. So if somebody, starts chewing gum, all of a sudden, the very next second, there's a new rule being tacked on the wall: no chewing gum. If somebody blinks too many times, there's a new rule: no, and no extra. No matter what happens, the second that it happens, there's an educational decree that gets put up on the wall: no doing this, no doing this. And I think we're getting to that point now where it's like for every single thing, I like the CFO that works in our office. I feel like he knows the FAR back and forth, and I think there's sometimes when I'm like, okay, can we do this? And he's like, no, no, no. There's a rule in the FAR that says you can. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I was like, well, I would like to see if we could do, no, no, no. There's a rule in the FAR. I'm like, dude, You've got to be kidding me. There's a rule for that too, but it's not just the FAR. Um, because you're
No, it's just
right
a good
that
example.
that's just a great example, but you also have the NISPOM, which is for security.
Yeah.
I mean, we are monitored and checked and regulated in every single way. So when somebody fills out the SF-86, I mean, from the second that they say they want to get a security clearance,
Yep.
in the NISPOM, there's, I think it's 202 tag A or something like that, where, even before I look at your information, I have to send you a disclaimer that says, I'm going to look at your information. Please, can you send me an okay? And I have everything, every single guideline before I even, like from the second that I say, you may have to get a clearance, immediately there's something in there that says, now that you started this conversation, you're locked into this big old NISPOM, book of rules that you have to follow. And there's so many rules in there that have to be followed and regulated, and it's all for national security. With the FAR, it's all for defense contracting rules. I mean, you name it, anything that we're doing within defense contracting, there is a rule for it. You take away one, I don't know that anyone's going to miss it. You add 1,500 more, I don't think that anyone's really going to notice. But you also have the audits. They're audits for every single one, and they're constantly updating and changing how they do those. So, it's a well-regulated, well-managed process that we have in the defense contracting world. Um, there's sometimes, though, when I feel as if we're forgetting our purpose, because it's like, okay, we're doing this because of why? Um, and that it
It
gets
is.
kind of frustrating. It's exhausting.
It's exactly the same. Yeah, it's exhausting. It's exactly the same as what we do to kids in K-12 with extensive assessments. It's
Yes.
all about regulation. It's all fear driven. And I think, well, I point that out because it is pervasive across our culture right now.
Yeah.
And so one of my most recent kind of branding little picture statements was that we're operating fear-based, and we need to be win oriented. And what I mean by that isn't a win-loss scenario, but I mean, what's our mission? What's our goal?
What's
And
the
then how do we
goal?
get there?
Yeah.
That's right. And so when we talk about K-12, the goal isn't to know your math facts immediately today. The goal is that you are a healthy, happy, well-adjusted, resilient, capable, employed individual at age 25.
Right.
We forget the goal, right? And then it's
Right.
the same thing. Our goal is to have, regulations and not just fair practices, but practices in DoD that improve our security and our defense capabilities. But our rules suggest that our goal is to ensure that absolutely positively nothing ever goes wrong, even if that means it costs us brilliance, capability, time, money.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
And
we
that
handicap ourselves out of fear.
we do. And the problem with handicapping yourself out of fear is that it doesn't lend itself to the ongoing fact that to the ongoing thing that there is an opportunity for training and for learning, which kind of, takes what I do out of the picture, because I'm a huge proponent of learning and training, which is what my company does. So if you're always, putting that fear in people's mind, they're going to give up before they even start. So, it's like, you want to keep people, there's an educator who I absolutely adore, Sugata Mitra, and he actually said that knowing is obsolete. You really don't have to know anything, and because it's like, how many people actually know? When I was growing up, I used to know all the phone numbers. I used to know them. I would just be able to recite them. You don't have to know them anymore. I sadly though, and I think you and I are the same way with this, we do remember numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually do remember my phone number and my address and the phone numbers that I had when I was growing up. So that's just a really stupid thing that I have, that I just can't get, I can't remember sometimes names, but I can remember numbers, which is really annoying. Um, but he, he did say that knowing is obsolete, and we're kind of getting to that point. And so people are not really going to look up the FAR because you're right. They're really, really thin pieces of paper. And if you really can't pull something up immediately, and if you really just can't look at anything immediately, you're going to be like, okay, I'm just going to do this. And then if you're constantly being driven by fear, you're like, well, maybe I can't do this. You kind of kill the creativity. And there's a
Completely.
lot, yeah, you really do. And it gets to the point now where in government contracting and just in society today, there are a lot of people who are just like, I'm not sure if I can do this or not. I'm probably going to get reprimanded for it. There is creativity out there, but like the reality of it is, if I'm going to get penalized for this, if someone's just going to come down on me anyway, what's the point of even learning or trying to figure it out? I'm not going to have an opportunity to learn because if I get penalized for this, I might get fired. So why am I going to learn anything about this? Because I'm going to be out of here. So
That's right.
you, there's no toolbox or toolkit or anything that is like a shortcut for the FAR. The NISPOM and the security world, they're really, really trying. They're making a lot of changes there. But as far
Yeah, they
as
are
the
making
defense
some. Yeah.
they really, really are. They're doing, they're changing the departments, they're changing how things work. They're really trying to make that better. But as far as the defense contracting world goes, there's so many, there was a couple years ago under the Obama administration where they were trying to cut down on certain types of government contracts to save money. So they had this whole thing called LPT, and I don't even think it was new, really. It was profound for my contract, because they made things, lowest price technically acceptable, which was, if it's the lowest price and it's technically acceptable, you are the winner. Right, I see you making that face, which means,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
that's not,
I sat in a fairly high level meeting one day, because we were dealing with IT reform in the Pentagon, and we just kept going back and forth on how much less it would cost if we just consolidated everything in and streamlined it without consideration of the nuances of what were needed in different groups and different
yeah,
branches.
yeah,
And I finally just stopped the whole meeting with the statement, sir, do you want to have the lowest cost technically acceptable force or the most lethal one?
and
We lost sight of the goal. Oh, it stopped the meeting. I mean, there was a moment of like, yes, ma'am. you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
because what I was really saying was, is our goal to save money, or is our and to be quick, or is our goal to have an effective defense force that can support this country and do so with the fewest lives cost?
right.
And we lose sight of that sometimes when we get into the details and the weeds. And lowest cost technically acceptable is one of those mantras that just makes me cringe. I mean, yes, if all things are equal
Mm-hmm.
and we're making a widget that has very little impact, fine.
Right.
But rarely in defense do we do anything that doesn't have impact.
Exactly. And fortunately for us, we were able to succeed anyway. But
That was good.
yes, it was very good. But there was a downside to it. And so, we're looking at going through this process again in the next couple of years. And, I'm like, if you guys do this again, you may not like what comes out on the other side of this win, whoever it comes out with. But it's not good business. It's not good business when you
No.
when you know someone's value, and you know the value of the mission, and you're not willing to invest in it. That's bad personal business. It is bad investments. It's just bad on all levels, and you're going to end up doing a redo of everything that you just did, and you're going to spend more money. So, and you're going to miss the mark. So what's the purpose? So, those are
Sales.
those are just some
Sales
misses.
and a punchline.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Unless, I mean, this is a really, well, what you're pointing out is really justification for what I'm doing. Why am I doing interviews? Why am I
Mm,
giving a personal voice to all the things that are happening? I lived it in government, and I know
Yeah,
what's not being said on stage. And I'm convinced that Americans know something isn't being said. They can't quite put their finger on what it is.
correct.
And so my hope is that by adding these stories and by gathering the points, because what you're saying, I don't think would be shocking to anyone.
Shouldn't.
But if they haven't walked in your shoes, they're not going to think of all the elements. They're not going to know what a FAR is. They're not
Right.
going, but they can understand the concepts easily enough. I met a, I stay in RV parks, and so I talk to people who work in areas different than where I work, and who have experiences different than I've had. And I was talking to a gentleman who pours concrete for a living, and he says, the problem with government is that people, it's the same as in concrete pouring. The people designing how they want the concrete poured have never poured concrete themselves. And I say, yes, sir.
Yeah, yes.
And so, I may never have poured concrete, but he taught me something, and he put all of this in great terms. And my hope is that is what we do as we talk to people, because every state is a little bit different and every industry is a little bit different, but I'm starting to see these same patterns.
Yes.
The
Yes.
fear, um, the lack of insight, not because we're not capable of understanding or not because we're not interested. Everybody says on TV people aren't interested in hearing. That, I don't think that's true. Everybody I meet is completely interested.
Yeah.
It's that they don't have access to the information.
Right, right.
And you're bringing that, which is really helpful. So if I were to pose one question, two outcomes. If we could change two things in government contracting,
Yeah.
what would you love to see?
Wow. Two?
I know you can put
Huh.
10 offline, but we got to two is what we can bite into.
Oh boy. Um, let's see. We have these meetings here in Orlando, um, and they're called Pulse, and I don't attend, because my contract isn't out of Orlando. And I know that they have a lot of discussions here on what they would like to see, but it's very, um, I would say that it's more Orlando based of what their needs and concerns are, but I don't think, and I've gone to some of the sessions out in San Diego. I don't I think I could safely speak for all if I were to say my two, because I think that there is a lot of there's a lot of need across the board for transparency. There are a lot of times when the contracts are written, as far as what the needs are, and they're very vague. And it's almost as if, there sometimes there are protests after contracts. And, it depends on which side you're sitting on. Are you sitting on the side where it looks like the contract was written for somebody and you're that somebody? And you're like, oh yeah, this is wired for me. So it's, if you're that somebody, then you're like, oh, this is great. And you see someone else on the other side raising their hand, asking you a question, and you're like, I don't care about your question. This is for me. Put your hand down. Or are you on the other side where you're like, this is so vague. I have no idea what they're asking, and that person over there isn't asking any questions. I wonder if it's for them. But there is a lot of vagueness. It would be great if it was a very level, even playing field. And I just don't know that that could ever happen because, if I'm in the position where this contract is wired for me, I want it. I'm not even going to make that. I'm not even going to say, I really wish it could be fair. It's everyone wants to be able to win their contract. That is food in our company's mouth, proverbial mouth. But still, everyone wants to be able to win that. So, yes, on some level, there needs to be some clarity on, you know, if you're going to say it's wired for someone, then put it in the FAR that we can make this private and don't have to put it out there. Make that something that you can do then. Because if that's what you're going to do anyway, just make it a rule that you can do that. Because there are a lot of contracts out there to go around. A lot. Our defense spending apparently is going up. There's still a lot of contracts out there that can be had. I think sometimes on the other side, that the requirements can be made, um, like not every single contract needs to have a clearance. Not every single contract needs to have certain quality of people or qualifications. I think that's something else that can be looked at to say, okay, do you really need a person that has a PhD and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in this, in this particular thing, it's like, come on, really? Do you really need that? Because now I'm looking at this PhD person who really actually could have a master's degree, and now I've just been able to drop this salary by a certain amount. And it's, and that probably goes with the same as the previous one. It's just sometimes the writing is very vague as to what they're wanting. Um, and there's some, I guess might be a third or it could be a second. The response times on some of them are just really weird. Uh, it's like you don't hear from them for a very long time. I don't know if there is a situation where they're backed up. Um,
Yes.
you don't. Yes.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Yeah, so there's a couple of things that happen. I mean, because this is what I did, right? So
Okay.
partly what happens is we have on the inside so many rules and regulations that we have to go through.
Oh,
So
I'm sure.
even if I set up everything you deal with, I deal with double on the other side. Except in your case, people get paid differentially if they're productive. On the inside, we we're stuck with whatever workflow they have. So first, we have to make a plan of what it is we want to do. Second, depending on your level, depends on how many approvals you have to get. Third, we have to go through security review. Fourth, we have to go through external review to make sure the information can be shared. Fourth, and then after that, we have to go through the contracts review. Then sometimes they require another one. All of these can be variable if someone goes on vacation, if somebody has a different priority. Given that we work in defense, China says something and everything gets pushed off to the side. So many layers, you can't just make a decision on your own. And then all that information comes back. And I can, we're able to look at the contracts or the proposals, and within a couple hours know which ones probably will get funded. But we're legally not allowed to say so.
Correct.
We go through the whole entire process of approval again, and we have to prove that we were thorough in all of it and whatnot. But if you know the area, there is one other layer to this. As a content expert, meaning I'm an expert in the area that we are funding,
right,
it means I know which proposals are really good right away. But most people are not experts in that area. So
True.
Then they have to go find experts to review, and then they have to try and understand the differences in each of these proposals. Now
Correct.
You have at least 2 layers, maybe 4. Now you see, I mean, time-wise, this just blows up. What could be a literally 4-hour process becomes 6 months.
Correct.
Yep.
And then the mission is still the mission. That hasn't changed.
Which was probably finished 2 months earlier.
Correct. So, that, like we said at the very beginning, there are layers and layers of bureaucracy, but, all that on your side does go to ensure that if there was a protest, the government has done their due diligence.
That is why we do it.
That is why you do it. And I do understand that. I don't know that there is anything else that could be done. I guess I would have to be, and I'm pretty sure though that you do have some ideas onto how that could be done better because you were in it. And so that being that you were in it, it makes for a better insight onto how things can be more efficient, I am certain.
Yeah, it makes a big difference having poured the concrete to understand how to better design it in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's for someone on the outside questioning the manner on how you provide things or how you facilitate things. It's a little disrespectful, I think, for me to show up and say, hey, this is how you pour the concrete, and have someone look at me and say, really? That's how I do it? I I manage a group of very creative people. And one of the things that I love to do the most is to watch them create. I give them the parameters in which to work, and I say, you do. I hired you because you're skilled. Now you go
Yes.
do. Don't disappoint me. So you go do the thing that you need to do because this is what you were hired to do.
Yeah.
So, if this is what they're supposed to be doing and this is what they're good at, by all means, do the thing that you're good at. My job is to remove obstacles out of their way so that they can do their job, which is what I feel that those who are on the other side are needing to do for government contractors. Remove obstacles out of our way so that we can do our job because we are part of that mission. Just do that. Just do that for us. We're supporting those who serve. We are serving those who are serving. So
Yeah.
the FAR is really supposed to help to remove obstacles out of our way so that we can do our job, not put obstacles in our way so that we're kind of, running an obstacle course and tripping over things and starting all over again.
Yeah.
Because that's,
Yeah.
I don't think anyone goes into, or maybe they do, but I would like to think that people do not go into business for the sole purpose of just saying, I want to see how much money I can make. I think, they
I
put
think there
it
are people who do that.
on the government side. If, I would like to think that they are doing it because, and if they get a contract, I would like to think that they understand and are aware of the mission of that contract because there is an end user. Eventually, there is an end user of whatever it is that they are doing. And I would like to think that they are supporting that, and that the government recognizes that. So when they do all of these things and what's supposed to take, just a couple of weeks, takes 6 months, we're not doing what we need to be doing. We're not getting our job done. And that to me is disappointing and something that I wish I could change in contracting.
So transparency
Yeah.
and removing obstacles.
Yeah.
And I do think both of those are achievable. The challenge is that the people who tend to get hired into the highest level government positions from a political perspective are experts in politics, not experts in management
Right.
and design. Yeah. And so I was
Correct.
talking to someone the other day and they said, you need to redefine the title of president, because if it's the political leader, then you need to be an expert in politics. But if it's an expert
Right.
in management and executive design, then that's a very different skill set. And I think what we'd argue
Right.
here is that executive design skill is more important than the politics skill, but politics skills are more important for getting hired into the job. So somewhere in the middle lies the right answer, and I'm not sure we figured it out yet.
You're the closest.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Well, we certainly are challenging bringing questions to the table and trying to get to the right answers instead of the fast answers or the lowest cost. Although I will argue politics is not cheap. I'm learning that very quickly.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah, this week has been welcome to reality. You have to raise lots of money, so I have to accept that these are the game rules, and you can have an altruistic bend all you like, but that's the space you'll stay in if you don't play by some of the rules. So
yeah,
Roger,
I guess you're taking the critical path of all of this. The longest path, I guess, the critical path, which is going through every single step of this all the way and doing it. You could probably write a book on methods when you're done.
Yes, we are actually. My editor
very
comes
good.
Out. So we meet up at the Monday. Actually, we start doing editing of the book. So there will be a book that comes out of this experience, regardless.
Great, awesome.
Just this weekend we'll be focused on shaping that into what is the most profound story that I have found through this experience. So no matter where we land, this is this is an exciting space to be in, and meeting people and connecting people like you and bringing these stories. It just it shows. I mean, what I've learned, if I may be so bold, is to say there are a whole lot of Americans out there who are doing amazing things, and
Yeah.
there is, yes, a subset of bad actors, and there are a subset of things we need to be afraid of. But by and large, we have amazing people in this nation who genuinely want to see brilliance move forward.
Yeah.
And I think what's actually missing is that connection piece, more than we're starting from zero. We're not. We
Right.
we have all
No.
the talent and money we need. Yeah. We just need to do a better job being transparent and removing obstacles.
Right.
I think that's a pervasive point.
I think
Yeah,
it goes across the
absolutely.
board.
It completely does. Karen, thank you so very, very much for
Thank you,
coming on,
JJ.
and thank you for showcasing a side of defense that people are very curious about, but don't often get insight to. So thank you so much. And thank you for all the work that you do for us women that support defense,
Of
because I think
course.
my dad and I talked on this topic earlier.
True. True.